Good evening, Tracy and San Joaquin County residents. I'm your host, Raj Singh, along with Gurteja 12 with our new show with new candidate running for San Joaquin County Supervisor position for District 5. Gurtej, please welcome our candidate and introduce her to our audience, please.
Thank you, Raj. So we are here today with our candidate, Rhodesia Ransom. So everybody knows her. So she is currently working as in city council for City of Tracy, who was a former planning commissioner, and she runs a nonprofit organization where she helps the kids in all aspects and works a lot for our community in the City of Tracy and across San Joaquin County. Now I'll request Rhodesia Ransom to please share some more about her.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. Everything you said is true. I am a Tracy City Council member, a former member of our Tracy Planning Commission. I served there for 7 years, and I'm a nonprofit executive director for an organization that provides mentoring and mental health, which is a very needed service for young people in San Joaquin County. I'm also the mother of three kids actually, who graduated from Tracy high schools in San Joaquin County, and I'm also a wife. So that's a little bit about me. And as was mentioned, I'm a candidate for the San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors, which is a super important position overseeing services and resources for the residents in San Joaquin County. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Rhodesia. We appreciate your time and energy too to give it to this platform and share your thoughts and vision with all the audience that would be listening to you today and watching your videos later on as well. So that being said, I want to jump into our first question topic for today's discussion, and that would be to start off with COVID-19, as it's a global pandemic and it's impacting everybody internationally, locally, nationally, everywhere. So I think everybody would be interested to know, as you are as an elected official currently and running for a county supervisor's position, what's your vision and how you are planning? First of all, what are the challenges you are hearing from the residents, and how are you planning on addressing them and proposing to create some solutions around that?
Okay, so I'll start by saying that COVID-19 is like the ultimate test of government. It's the ultimate test of governance. Our jobs, number one, are to make sure that we can keep our community residents safe when we're making decisions, and that we can protect the health and the wealth of the community. And COVID-19 is a threat to the health and the wealth of our community. So very early on, when this pandemic, started coming towards California, I personally also was having meetings with our city manager about what we needed to do, how we could prepare, and nobody could have actually prepared for this. So it was really everything being done in that moment to not only show leadership, but to really make sure that you were able to pivot and have good responses for the things that were happening. So on the very first night that our city council had to declare that we wanted to do a shelter in place, it was actually kind of a recommendation. It wasn't the mandatory, but that was the recommendation. That night was the first night I said, what are we going to do for small businesses? Because it doesn't take a genius to even understand that when you're going to have shelter in place and businesses are going to be impacted. We have a ton of small businesses here locally, not just in the city of Tracy, but also throughout our county. And so was it really important that we are able to start thinking ahead. What can we do for them? What can we do for our residents? So we did what we could to defer, payments for utilities and things like that, because we knew those residents may not have access to money if they can't go to work. So that's a really small part of just trying to be sensitive and be human beings to help other people. But then there's a bigger picture of that, and that is, how do you keep the community safe? We have a small local hospital here in Tracy, and that hospital was not doing COVID testing. So I personally went within my personal network to call and to get the testing center that we have. And I said, can you do me a favor for, 30 days, 60 days? And they said, let us look into it. That testing center is still here, because in order to stop COVID, we have to know where it's at, and we need to be able to make sure that people are not unknowingly passing this virus around our community because COVID needs a body, it needs a host. So those are some things that we've done. Here today, you'll see what came out is that it's now mandatory in the state legislators put out that it's now mandatory for companies to tell their employees if another employee had COVID. They were not doing that. We were getting all kind of calls and really trying to work with businesses because, you know, the businesses were trying to make quick adjustments. I raised PPE, personal protection equipment for the local hospital that ran out. And it really was a collaboration, right? So when I say I raised it, I got together with some other businesses and some other electeds. We helped raise, you know, the protection equipment. And so now as we look at COVID, we don't know how long it's going to be here. We also have to plan for recovery. This may be an ongoing thing. So what are we going to do to protect businesses in the future? So we need to make sure that we're using, there's federal CARES Act dollars that were given to the community, to the city and the county. And now we need to make sure we're allocating that in a way that will be available when businesses need it, and also making sure that we're that voice when certain businesses need help, like our hair salons. Hair salons have a lot of training, a lot of requirements, but they were the last ones to be able to open. So, you know, just putting those calls into our governor's office and making sure we're in communications with our public health directors to do what's going to be necessary on a dime, like just very fast, make changes to protect the health and wealth of people who live in our county and as well as our cities. I think you're on mute, Raj. It says mute.
It happens every time with me. I apologize for that. I'm so
That's
sorry. Yes, thank you for highlighting on that topic, Rudisha. It is very imperative, and you touched the great points that it's impacting the small businesses, and that's the backbone of any city. And we need to make sure that we're engaging and taking care of them. And that being said, I on the previous episode with the person running for assembly seat, Kathy Miller, I had the same question asked her, and I'm probably going to go over the same question with you too. Some folks, they are not unable to pay the rent, and they're barely making their sales, and they can't even pay the employees. Is that something is being done by the county, or are there any resources available to a city as well, City of Tracy?
Yeah, so there's actually not enough resources, right? Like I said, nobody said, you know, in March of 2020, we have a pandemic that we're planning for. We weren't prepared for that. And that really exposed us that we need to be better prepared. So there's a lot of deferments for rent and mortgage, and a lot of, you know, people who are renting properties, they have renter protections through the state. But that also impacts the landlords, the people who actually own the properties, because now it's a business, right? So now they're not getting money to protect their business. So I know that San Joaquin County actually has, as part of their program, so they, with the CARES Act funding, part of it was they put aside money for a grant program. So you can actually apply for funding for different, you know, business relief. It's not going to be enough. Let's just be real. It's not going to be enough, but the landlords, because it is a business, they can apply for that relief. And then if you're a tenant, you have other protections that the state of California has already put in place. So the city of Tracy, we actually did do some funding. We did 2 different types of grants using CDBG funds, as well as one type of fund that would help small business owners. So there's 2 different ways to access it. The problem being there's just not enough. And then with CDBG, which is the Community Development Block Grant Funds, there's some restrictions based on income that some of our business owners were not able to overcome because they might have made too much money. So we really have to find more ways to support small businesses and people who are being impacted with their rental and mortgage payments as well.
Thank you, Rudisha, for highlighting on that. And now I would like to Grutesh to keep us moving to the next part of our discussion. So Grutesh, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Rudisha, for touching the COVID aspect, because every citizen is facing it. And as a lawmaker, so you mentioned, so what currently the situation is and how in future this will be dealt. as in future. So the condition, the fiscal wise, it'll deteriorate. So we have the plans. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that said, so we have the affordability as well as the jobs that are not in abundance in these cities like Tracy, Mountain House. Majority of the population, they have to drive across Altamont Pass. So I was reading from the Central Valley, more than 100,000 people on everyday basis, they have to go outside of these cities to find the job opportunities. The other reason for that is for the affordability aspect of a housing. Approximately 110,000 should be the income yearly of a household to afford a house. In public sector, in these areas, less than 50,000 is the income, and in private sectors, less than 70,000. So there is a huge gap for the affordability as well as the job opportunities. So
Yeah.
what do you think where we are currently and where you want to see this district in future?
So there's a lot of things you just touched on in that one small question. Um, the fact that so many people travel from the Central Valley to the Bay Area for jobs is indicative of a very big issue, which is the jobs housing balance. We do not have balance with housing and jobs. The Bay Area used to have balance, but now they have more jobs and they don't have enough land. And so now people are coming here for housing because there's not enough land to continue building housing that people need. But as a result, what's happening is we don't have a lot of the infrastructure, a lot of the amenities that a lot of these companies are looking for, and we're also missing an educated workforce. So a big part of being able to really plan a community to be sustainable, to plan a growing county, because this particular area, you have to realize, used to be mostly agricultural, mostly farms, and industry. And so now we have a bunch of people who moved here because it's affordable, but they still have to commute. And that commute is only going to get worse because we're the only place left to build homes in this area. And so as we are looking to grow our community, it's important that we put some requirements in place, that we work with our local cities. I'm part of the San Joaquin Partnership, which is it's my position on the city council. It's a committee that I'm assigned to. And part of what we do is we actually have an executive director who works with the Bay Area companies, and we bring them out here and we show them the different areas where they can actually locate their companies. And it's time for us to make some deals with some of those places, because part of the reason they're not coming here is because we're missing some things, we're lacking some things. Infrastructure is a huge thing. So as we build housing, infrastructure is mandatory. Like, you cannot build housing. It's a kind of a misperception. People think you're building housing and you don't have infrastructure. Well, that's not true, because you cannot build housing without building infrastructure. But we can definitely do a better job of working with the Bay Area companies and those technology companies and the places that some of our people are commuting from right here in San Joaquin County to go to in the Bay Area. And people are going, well, we already have people who commute there. Why won't the companies move here? Well, we have an issue with education. We've done studies and we know that only 25% of our residents have the education that they need. So what those companies are essentially telling us is that in the long run, we don't have a sustainable workforce for them. And part of that is because of, it's all interconnected, housing affordability. So personally, I have 3 kids who graduated here locally, and my kids are in college. One's finishing up his last class, one's a junior at her university, and one's a freshman in college. They're going to have all this education, but they're not going to be able to live here in San Joaquin County, and definitely not in this community, which means we're going to perpetuate that problem. So the only way we can do that is by making sure that we are putting affordable housing into our community so that we can make sure that those kids and as well as those seniors have a place to live. Tracy just actually authorized, our council did, we had a 4-1 vote to authorize what's called a transit-oriented development that included our first real step towards a commitment to making sure that we have a housing affordability. It's a 10% inclusionary housing. You've never seen anything like that in Quincy, but it's a good way, if the voters approve it, for us to say we are committed to starting to build affordable housing, workforce housing, that people can actually afford to come here with their education and live in our city. And so those are some things that we have to do. We have to keep our educated young people here. We have to put the infrastructure in and work with those companies and be able to make sure that we are building a community that's not just a place where people come and sleep, because that also impacts our economy. When you work in the place that you live, your dollar turns over. It turns over because you're here locally, so you're going to spend it at the restaurant. Then, the local restaurant person's going to go spend it when they do their business. We need that money in our economy, and we have to fix our housing and jobs balance in order to fix that.
Thank you very much for acknowledging this. And as you have suggested, that there are works being done with the companies that are across the Altamont Pass to encourage them to come here. So one thing you mentioned, there's a lack of infrastructure, and with the housing, yes, infrastructure will come. And the other point you touched, that the workforce has to be encouraged and it has to be developed. So from the aspect of the city is improving, infrastructure is building, but it'll take some time. So it'll take a couple of years. During that duration, the citizens, they have to commute. So from the commute perspective, like we have 205, we have 580, and we have ACE trains. So all these things are becoming jam-packed. So what do you think where we are from the transportation perspective until we have the job opportunities here? So what would be the future look like?
So what I hear you saying is, what can we do while we wait for those companies to come in the infrastructure? So we got to do more than one thing at a time. There's currently this push that we are all supporting in order to bring the Valley Link train here. And so that is going to connect people from the ACE to BART type of thing, which will actually help with the South Bay as well as with the the South Bay is already connected through ACE, but the East Bay can be connected through Valley Link. So we need to do as many of those opportunities as we can to get people on alternate forms of transportation to connect them to the Bay Area. But keep in mind that that's not the only solution, because we're building houses faster than we're going to be able to build one single solution. Housing is continuing. So I don't want to kid you. But what I will say is that what we can do right now, the pandemic has given us an opportunity for us to be able to show that people can work from home and be successful. And so hopefully we can work with some of them to put some satellite places here in our community. And really, we have to do more than one thing at a time to make it possible.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so the internet, these connectivities, so maybe they will be part of, like, we are using water, electricity. So yeah, those are the options, innovative options that you are thinking about. So thank you very much for touching those, as the commute time that is increases on day-by-day basis. So there are talks about the train, the Valley Link, that will be separate from the ACE train. So ACE train now connects to San Jose. So this Valley Link that will connect to our BART station that is in Dublin. So that will help our Tracy as well as our Mountain House commuters a lot. So thank you very much. You are very good proponent of the transportation aspect. So I think we have lost her. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a technical issue.
Right.
Let's just wait a couple seconds to a minute.
Can you hear me?
She's back.
Can you guys hear me? Hello.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So
you're still on mute, Rhodesia.
You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second, Gertage. I'm sorry. You were asking me something. I couldn't hear anything you said.
Can you please refresh your browser once?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. So, Raj, can you please summarize what we have discussed so far?
I think she's back. Yes. DJ, can you say something? Yes, I can hear.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Just saying thank you very much for touching the aspect from the commuter perspective. As transportation, that is a gradual process. We cannot do it overnight. So you have a vision for the Valley Link. ACE train connects us to San Jose. So this Valley Link will connect our Tracy, Mountain House, and other commuters to the BART station.
Yes, we have to, like I was saying before, we have to do more than one thing at a time, because we are continuing to develop real estate here, right? Because we're the only place that can do it. And it's not even about one particular city. Tracy is building houses, Mountain House is building houses, Lathrop is building houses. So even if one city says we're going to stop building, you're not going to be able to stop the traffic that's going to come from the cities that are continuing to develop. And we did not get in this, situation overnight. So we have to be focused on doing more than one thing at a time. So that is trying to get people to be able to work locally, making sure that we can connect people who must transfer to the Bay Area to jobs, getting them there in a way, that it's not so such a drain on their lives. They spend a lot of time on the freeway.
Thank you very much.
And a follow-up part on that, Rhodesia, couple things we have talked about, right? The COVID is teaching us a lot in a different manners, right? So one of the things that's happening right now in the corporation sector, especially in the IT sector, people are working. They are get to work from home now. So what is it doing? It's creating such a huge load on the internet issue, connectivity issue, and again, as we are talking about education side, so kids are being they're putting on they're having classes online, and they are on the computers as well. But overall, if you look at in our city, we don't have very much internet providers. And
Yeah.
if you're talking about the innovation and technology right now, and being right next to the Bay Area, which is the IT hub, what about some of the points about fiber optical cables or putting them in? So we have, because like you said, everything's interconnected. So
Right.
putting the infrastructure come plug and play kind of situation would be only done if we have a very invested up to speed internet and all this infrastructure in place. So what are your thoughts and vision on that?
So that's one of the things when I said when we're talking to other companies and finding out what do they need to come here, those are some of the things that they need. If you have a high-tech business, you're not going to locate in a place that doesn't have high-tech connection because you're not going to be able to do your core business the way that you do other places. So a lot of the places that are currently in construction, Prologis and Tracy, River Islands over in Lathrop, as they're building their new infrastructure facilities, they are actually putting this in so that people can actually access it. But I really think that countywide there needs to be a bigger focus on it. I know Stockton has made some strides. There was there was some talk about it in Tracy a couple of years back, but really we have to make a concerted effort to countywide be able to look at our infrastructure issues. One of the reasons you don't see it at the level that you should is that we don't really have great tax sharing agreements. There's not a ton of money for infrastructure in local cities. So really, we either need the county to give us the money that we need through these tax sharing agreements, or we're going to need the county to work with our state, and we're going to need them to actually fund some of this. A lot of what happens at the County Board of Supervisors comes through pass-through. So it's going to be about working with our federal legislators, our congressmen, as well as with our state legislators as well, to find out what are the opportunities to get this region up to speed when it comes to the technology that we need. It's the same way that we fund highways. Now we need to fund technology highways. And so I've had some conversations with our leaders at the state and federal level about really bringing this county up to the standard of what we need in order to be able to meet the challenge of actually creating local jobs. And it's not about just placing a building here. It's about understanding that, there's a lot of things that go into running a business. And it also includes education. So that's part of it.
Thank you, Risha, for highlighting on that part. So follow up something you already touched, but I want to get a little bit more specific about it. Education sector. We talked about home affordability and jobs, that there are people living here, they're making this their hometown, and they go to work to over the Altamont Pass. And along with that, you brought a really great point where you said that there's no sustainable workforce. That's related to why we're trying to look into creating a sustainable workforce by having a university or the school of the educational institution. And I believe about not too long ago, maybe a month ago, there was an article published by, I believe, Record from Stockton, that there are some challenges opening up the CSU in the Stockton area as well.
Right.
But my question is overall, we have Mountain House, Tracy, combine this, the way the population is increasing, why are we not having those sort of a conversation to open something in our area?
So those conversations are actually happening. Um, it was really disappointing to get the report back, the study that said, hey, we can't sustain a CSU Stockton. And I know I do not represent Stockton, but if we can get a campus that close, then we can actually pull for a satellite campus. As soon as Assemblymember Eggman was already working with, the governor and trying to push for that, I reached out to her. I connected her with some local landowners. There are people in this community that are willing to put satellite, campuses here. And it's definitely important for us to have public education that is accessible for our young students as they are graduating, so that there's not such a huge stretch between where they're going to college and the community that they grew up in. When you look at industries like the medical industry, as example, we have a general hospital, the San Joaquin County General Hospital here. We can have, schools that have nursing and schools that have, I don't want to say we're going to have a medical school here, but, you can definitely have some of the education to fill the local hospitals. That definitely adds to our income. Some of the technology education, those things all would help build this community. And so everything that's worth having is not always easy. They got told no for now, but I think that we can build a really strong coalition and that we have a really strong argument with all the continued growth that is happening here. I know that Assemblymember Eggman is not letting up on that dream of making that happen. I know we've tried so hard to work with some other small private colleges, but it's really not the same, because a lot of the times the private colleges may be a little more out of reach, and the young people end up with a lot more student debt than they want. So the push for something local as far as a public education is a huge game changer when we're talking about being able to have an educated workforce that will be able to attract jobs.
Thank you, Rhodesia, for highlighting and sharing your thoughts and vision on that part. And I would like Ritesh to keep us moving. We're hitting the almost 27 minutes to our discussion. So what's our next topic, Ritesh? Please go ahead.
Yeah, so as we all have seen, so this country has faced some hurdles with the public safety. So public safety for our citizens, as well as the public safety for our law enforcement officers. So what do you think where we are with that perspective, and how do you see the future of public safety?
Well, public safety is a part of every community, right? It's like nobody wants to feel unsafe in their community. No one wants to be in a situation where they need to call for help and there's no one available. I've not met that person yet. So I've always been a supporter of making sure that we have a safe community, and public safety is very well rounded, right? It's working with our law enforcement officers, making sure that they have the tools and resources. It's also working with our community. The community policing model has been very effective in building relationships with the community and with law enforcement. Right now, there's a lot of different things that are out in the community because there's a lot of civil unrest, and there are some really good reasons for that, because there's some things that have happened that have just not been right. And so what I have found is that it's important for us to continue to have strong relationships with our law enforcement and continue to make sure that we are building on the solutions. I think any good law enforcement agency wants to be well represented by the people that work for them. I will tell you that here in the city of Tracy, and we have actually worked with our law enforcement, and our police chief, as well as the officers, have adopted and accepted some of the policy proposals that will make sure that they have access to more training and more tools that will help them support one another while they're working on the community, in the community. And then as a community, we have to commit to giving them the support so that they don't have to go out to social service calls. That's something, if you ever talk to law enforcement, they don't want to go to homeless calls. They don't want to go to mental health calls. They're not, they may have some training, but at the end of the day, if it's not a matter of life or death, or something criminal happening, saving some property, more than likely they would rather do that kind of stuff and let the other people that are trained in those other fields handle that. And so here in our county, we actually have an issue with our sheriff's department has been underfunded for a very long time. And the job of the county supervisor is to oversee the sheriff's department. It's underfunded. understaffed. We've had some issues here recently. The County Board of Supervisors oversees the Sheriff's Department, and the District 5 is Mountain House, Tracy, portion of Manteca, and then River Islands. And you may have saw recently in the news earlier this year where the sheriff had to actually pull services out of Mountain House because they don't have enough officers. Well, you don't have enough officers because you're not even paying the median wage in the area. So we have to make sure that if we really are committed to keeping our community safe, that we're not just a training ground for people to go work somewhere else, first of all, and then second of all, that we are working with our law enforcement community and with our mental health service providers. And sometimes, you know, the cards that we're dealt are not fair, right? The response to homelessness, they have civil rights. So we have to work with what we have and work with the the people who are supposed to keep us safe and make sure they have tools and resources. We also have to make sure that our young people have access to safe places to be active so that they don't get involved in gang activities. Years ago here in South County, we had a lot of younger people who were known to be gang affiliated. So we have to continue to build up services to protect those young people and keep them active and keep them from being engaged in criminal things. And all of those things have a lot to do with public safety. Public safety is not just about police. It's about working with law enforcement, working with community organizations, and really looking at the best way to approach the entire problem in our community for the health and protection of the community.
Thank you, Rhodesia. Thank you for giving us all that information and educating all the information. It was a lot, so thank you. I just
Long
answer. You
that. Sorry for the long answer.
Yeah, it was great though. Then I think we need to move into something correlating to the public safety to a healthcare side. So as you were running for the District 5, which covers River Island, Tracy, Mountain House area, and part of Manteca, I want to address something that's what I've been hearing and talking to different folks living in Tracy and Mountain House on the healthcare side, lack of the hospital. Because under this COVID-19, we have only one hospital, which it has emergency room and beds, which is Sutter. And otherwise, we have to either go to Stockton or Modesto, which is both ways at least 30 minutes out for everyone from Tracy, another 20 minutes for Mountain House folks. And some conversation needs to be addressed around this, that how we can bring in hospital to serve the population in Mountain House and Tracy. What are your some thoughts and vision on that?
So every community, the county and the city, they have general plans. We knew that these communities were growing, and we knew that as they grow, you have to have more fire, you have to have more law enforcement, and you have to have more hospitals. We've known this. So now it's time for us to pull the trigger and get those things done. You're speaking of Tracy. Tracy was always planned to have another hospital, to have a bigger hospital. The current hospital that we have in town actually owns land to be able to build the next hospital, a bigger hospital. Because as we've continued to grow, our city is actually split in half by train tracks. If those train tracks were to be active, during some crazy situation, we could essentially be split in half with, you can only get to one hospital. And this pandemic has shown us that when we get in a situation, and we were over capacity at one point in our hospitals, now COVID has actually calmed down with hospitalizations, fortunately, but we don't know what it's going to look like. It's imperative now that we start exercising those plans, and we have to call our hospitals, we have to call them on the contracts and the agreements that they had with this community. If they're not going to build it, they need to let us know so that we can go find someone who will build the hospital. It's not only good for the community for the safety aspect, but having that healthcare industry, it's a really good industry to have in our community. It's a much needed industry. People are always sick. There's always going to unfortunately, be a need for hospitals and medical clinics. We have a lot of medical clinics, but we absolutely have to look at what the general plan is telling us we need to do, and we should have already moved on that. And I think we're a lot more sensitive to it now, and you're going to start hearing a lot of electeds talk about how they want to move the hospital forward. it's easier said than done. So it's easy for us to say that, but now we have to work in collaboration and give them the support. And with this CARES Act funding and the national attention, we really have to make a good case to be able to move it forward and make it happen.
Okay. Thank you for highlighting on that part. Ritesh, I think you have something
Yeah,
to say
no,
on that.
thank you very much. Yeah, so you have mentioned looking at the general plan, what the trigger points are for the hospital and working to incentivize them to build more as this COVID has triggered it. So yeah, more and more now people will be looking and hospitals will be looking to expand the facilities. So hospitals we have touched the public safety. Now the work on homelessness, as quarter of our population in California, they are homeless. In these areas, especially Tracy, adjacent cities, they are facing more and more homelessness on day-to-day basis. Approximately 200 citizens are homeless in the city of Tracy. So I know that you work tirelessly on this issue, but the task force also have more information about it. So please let our audience know where we are with respect to the homelessness now and how the future will look like.
Homelessness. So homelessness is growing everywhere. It's just nationally, you'll see homelessness is growing. So as communities are growing, such as ours, since I've lived here, we've added 40,000 more people to this San Joaquin County, well, to this city that I live in Tracy. And so, we're starting to have a lot of growth. And so we're getting a lot of urban issues. There's also a lack of, mental health in our community. There's a lack of substance treatment in our community. And we have to honestly look at the root of the issues and be able to start addressing those. So when you talk about the work that I've done, when I got involved in politics, I had already noticed and had already been having conversations with the different people who work with the homeless service providers, whether they were doing mental health services. There's a little feedback. Can you all hear that? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So whether, I've been working with the people it's more important. You don't want to just feed people, right? Because feeding people does not solve the problem. It definitely is a humanitarian thing to do, not leave people out there hungry. But we also need to make sure that they have access to resources. That is one of the issues here in South County, is that the mental health services are located in Stockton, and there's not even a lot of mental health services. And so we really need to do a better job of making sure we have access to mental health services, substance use services. So one of the things that I did is I worked with a group of people that were already serving the homeless, and we worked together to bring in some funding to do it's called Housing and Community Development Agency. We were able to get our city connected with them to actually get funding to put together a strategic plan that has the best practices in it. And we're actually finally starting to move in the right direction, meaning that we're going to have a facility where you can actually move people out of our parks, because homelessness is not just about the people that are homeless. It's also impacting our business owners who, feel like their customers are not comfortable going into their businesses. There's, the blight and the trash that, people who don't have a place to live, they carry everything with them. And when they don't need things, they leave them behind, right? So we also have the fact that there was some court rulings that said, if you're a community that does not have a place for a person to go, you can not move them out of public places. So we need places for people to go so that we can say to our community that we are also mindful of how this is impacting you, who has a job, who has a business, who wants to take your kids to the park, and be able to move people out of our parks into different facilities, making sure that they have access to people who can case manage them and connect with drug treatment, with mental health, with other family members if they're not from this community. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to go, but it does give some relief. It helps with the big overall picture. In this community, in Tracy, and I'm going to say this because I'm talking to the Seeks of Tracy, in Tracy, it's not a huge problem. It's a big problem for those of us who've never seen it like this. But it's something that we can actually get ahead of. And so it's all about being proactive. We should never turn down federal money that doesn't have strings attached to solve a problem, because that's why we're sending our congressmen to go and fight for these dollars. So we're going to take the money that's available. We're going to open up a place that's going to be a shelter that, we're going to work with some navigation service providers to get the people there temporarily, get them triaged, if you will, to get out of that place and try to get them into some sort of transitional place. It, it's a cycle. It's not, some of those people may relapse and become homeless again, and you might be doing the same thing again, but at least it gives our community members who are not homeless, it gives those homeless people a little respite, and it gives our community also a little comfort in knowing that we really are working to make sure that they feel safe, because everybody needs to feel safe in their own community. So those are some of the things that we are doing, is working together to put together real policy, not just spend your money cleaning up the mess and moving people from place to place, because that is not an answer. That's just, it looks good for 1 minute, but when you look at the budget and you look at spending $750,000 just to clean up after the homeless people, but not giving them a place that will actually start to solve the problems and connect them to services, it's wasteful. And so we don't want to be wasteful. We want to solve problems, and that's how we're approaching that.
Thank you,
very
Rhodesia.
much. Yeah, go ahead,
Just a
Raj.
quick clarifying question, Rhodesia. So thank
Yeah.
you for helping me and our audience understand the homelessness topic the kind of task force you worked on. But more clear on that part, I'm trying to understand the scope of it. So
Okay.
if you're opening up something for the homelessness, is there going to be any sort of checks and balances? Are these resources available only for the people they are belong to Tracy, or is this something open as a county-wide?
So one of the things that I have asked for is that we look at a model that was done in Santa Ana, where the navigation center only services people who are from the community. I know that your organization actually goes out and serves those people. When you talk to those people, a lot of them are either they're from here. I've talked to people who've held jobs in the school district who are homeless now on the street, right? So you go out and you talk to those people. They're not all coming here because we're such a giving community. The weather is definitely better here than some other places, but the idea would be that you want to not make the problem bigger by having something that's just an open attraction, right? So the Santa Ana model that I really, they started this model, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. I've been keeping up with that model. They have they work with an organization called Mercy Housing that does the navigation, and what they do is they find out where you're from. If you're not from there, they try to work with you to connect you back to your hometown or with some family members or some friends. But if you are from that community, then they give you the full services that you need in order to try and get you the help that you need. Let's be honest, some people cannot be helped because their capacity, maybe their mental health capacity is just not there. But the ones that can be helped, you want to try to get them the support that they need. You want to make sure that you're not building something that's everyone's going to be flocking to. And I think as a county, there's a big push right now through the county strategic plan and the continuum of care, which causes all of us, it's called the continuum of care. It's a big model that's nationally done for homelessness. And it's so that the entire community, we're working together. We're not passing our problem somewhere else and, pushing it further down the line, but they're asking every city in the county to participate holistically as a part of the solution for this problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Rhodesia, for touching it. So as you have mentioned, there are lots and lots of models available throughout the country that can be implemented. They have all the rules and regulations with them. And the other thing you pointed out, that we are not at that point where we cannot be ahead of this crisis. So we can be ahead of this crisis for planning. So we talked about, so I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we have to be. One of the things I talked about a little bit earlier was that we are looking to, build the Valley Lane train. One of the things we know, you can look at any community that has a transit. is that homeless people travel that way. So we need to be able to make sure that we have a plan in place before we start, or as we are trying to build those other amenities that we want in the community, because it's going to be nothing for people to jump on a train, and move about one way or another. So it's important that we are looking at the entire city, the way homelessness actually happens in a community, and then the best way to actually solve the problem, not just close our eyes and hide the problem for a minute, because all that does is it moves the problem out of your sight for a few minutes, and then the next time you see it, it's really big. So we have to be mindful as we grow.
So just another aspect from our discussion, as we have discussed about the homeless citizens, so how to handle those, how to have a multi-part solution for those. So from the perspective of a citizen, so who is visiting the park, from the perspective of a business owner, as you briefly touched, there is a regulation in California that from the public places, those people who are homeless, those cannot be moved. So because this is something new that the city is facing, this is something new that the citizens are seeing and the businesses are getting impacted. So is there anything, if suppose a business faces this situation, and as you in your answer you mentioned that it hampers or it just puts a barrier for the customers to come in. From that aspect, so what kinds of facilities are available with them, who they can approach, how they can approach this kind of situation?
Yes. So the Ninth Circuit Court, which is kind of this Western region, is the one who made the decision. So it doesn't just, it started in Boise, Idaho. So it actually affects not just California. But I will be honest with you, we weren't doing a good job before that decision came down. And it really, that decision is to actually force cities and force communities who were just trying to shove their homeless problem on someone else. That decision was put in place to make you actually not just honor the civil rights of people, but it's to make you not push that problem off on anyone else. So when it comes to, like the business owners and people like that, I would say they really need to work with the community to figure out, be part of the solution, right? I think it's for those who are upset, they should be upset. It took us way too long to start solving this problem. It took us way too long to finally say, yes, we're going to actually do something about it. So now they need to work with us as we are finally, moving things forward. I know I've seen a lot of local businesses even be part of like feeding the homeless and things like that, but that's not the end all solution. We want you to be able to know that when your customers come, that you don't have to worry about that. So you can continue to, instead of calling law enforcement expecting them to arrest people or shuffle them along, now our law enforcement or whomever's in charge of actually working with the homeless population will have a place to say, now I can actually respond properly to Mr. Business Owner who calls in, who needs that support. So it's all, it's very holistic. It's not a perfect answer. And it's something that, there's going to be a different response given different situations. But the overarching picture is to be able to work together, to be proactive, to work with those business owners, and to do as much as we can to have a solution that doesn't involve the front of their store or the front of their, restaurant or the local park.
Thank you very much. So the answer for those people who are facing this business owner, so they have the authority to reach to the law enforcement officers as well as the city staff to find a solution of this issue.
I think absolutely they should be part of those conversations. And I think one of the issues that we have just in governance in general, not just with homelessness, is that people aren't engaging government for themselves. Like they're not watching these conversations. They don't know what's really happening. And so they're naturally upset. They should be upset. But if they were to see that we've been in conversations for the last 4 years, trying to figure something out and trying to get a solution, they could have actually been part of pushing the hand of government a little bit faster, to not just do something temporary, but to do something that would actually start moving things in a way that can be sustainable. And so I always encourage people. I'm really happy that you all are really doing this and getting people interested in local government. But I think if you're a business owner, you need to not just talk to elected officials, you need to go watch those meetings. And, because that's where you hold people accountable, not just when you meet with them one-on-one. It's when they are in that group of 5 or 7, or depending on where you are, how are they able to actually move things forward in a way that will actually be helpful? And it's really hard to do that if you're not participating.
No, thank you very much. Everybody should be part of the solution and looking for the options that we have right now and working towards a better tomorrow. So I'll get back to Ryan.
I think it's kind of bring us to the end of our discussion. We pretty much hit all the points that me and Gutej have, and when we're talking to the residents to ask these questions of the candidates, that's what we build up together. And Rhodesia, at the end, anything that you have missed or we did not ask you, something that you would like to tell your audience through this platform, please go ahead.
So thank you, first of all, for having me here. I really appreciate what you have been doing. I was able to catch a couple of the other candidates that you all had on there. I know you guys call this political talk, but I'm going, no, it's not really political talk. It's really governance talk. It's about like how we work together to make our community what it should be and what people are expecting it to be. And I know we didn't talk specifically directly about the County Board of Supervisors, but a lot of the things that we talked about has a lot to do with what is anticipated or what is expected for the County Board of Supervisors to look out for the health and the well-being of the community. A lot of the very important public services, from the mental health services, public health, as you can see, the pandemic response for this county is coming directly out of the County Board of Supervisors. So it's important that, that the person that is there is a leader that can be trusted to work with the people and to work with the best interests of the people, that we are actually responsive to the best results. Sometimes people don't really want to hear what's actually best for them based on data and based on science and things like that. It's also important that we are working to provide the best solutions to issues of economic, despair for our small businesses and for our community. So that a lot of that happens at the Board of Supervisors, the Sheriff's Department, things like that. So it was very much correlated to what we talked about, even though it was not direct. I just think that people are now more aware that the County Board of Supervisors is a hugely important position for every city in this county. It's something that should be treated, it's a full-time job, to be honest with you. It's not something you do as a part-time job. So some people don't know what they do there, that it is a full-time job, and that as county supervisor, you have a lot of different committees. You have to be part of the mental health committee, part of the committee overseeing the general hospital. These are all things that I think are very important when you look at from an administrative point, looking to make sure that we understand that things are connected, just like we talked about jobs and bringing businesses. You can't bring businesses without jobs, without education, without infrastructure. So all of this is happening at the Board of Supervisors. I'm really excited about, going to be, at the Board of Supervisors to be able to really look out for South County, which includes all of Tracy, all of Mountain House, Manteca, as well, part of Manteca, as well as River Islands, because it's so important that we have someone there that's going to get us the fair share of resources and support that we need. So thank you for this opportunity to introduce where I'm coming from to this community. And if you have any other questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those as well. But I really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, so before we leave, yes. Sorry, go ahead, Raj.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say thank you, Rhodesia.
Yeah, so I just want to request you, so how do you want the voters to remember you? At the end, a brief statement.
Well, I want the voters to understand that if they just look over my record, I've had a heart for serving this community since day one, because that's just what I bring to the table. I really am about collaborating and being fully engaged. My background in administration, just growing up in public service, it's just really the only life that I know is to get involved in service in a way that is effective and based on the best available information, evidence-based information. It's not just about me and what I'm feeling that day, because sometimes the best solution may not be what I personally want for myself. The best solution may be about what's best for the majority of the community. And so that is what I'm bringing to the table. I'm willing to go and serve this community with my whole heart. And that's what I've done in the past. And I just hope that they would take some time to look at what I bring to the table and what I want to do for San Joaquin County as District 5 Supervisor. So that's it. Thank you.
And Rhodesia, at the end, if anybody have a follow-up question, they wanted to contact you for anything to clarify, where would you like them to contact you? Can you share your information?
Absolutely. I can be reached, Rhodesia Ransom. You have my name, it's spelled there. I have the Facebook page. I have two, Rhodesia Ransom for County Supervisor and Rhodesia Ransom. You can message me. You can email me at Rhodesia, first name, at ransomforsupervisor.org. And my number's on Google. So I take calls from constituents all the time. I return as many as I can because I really think it's important that we are accessible and accountable to people's questions. Even if we don't agree with them, we have to respond to them. So anybody who's looking for answers, or even if you want to participate in government or bring a suggestion, I'm here for that too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rhodesia.
And to the audience, we had a wonderful discussion. So I agree with Rhodesia. It's not political talk. It's more informative. So we have touched COVID, affordability, jobs, education, public safety, hospitals, and homelessness. We may have left some of the topics or forgot to ask. So please reach out to the candidate, ask your questions, get them clarified, and make an informed decision for November 3rd. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Travel World. Get updated with travel and tourism world. News, views, deals from across the globe. Watch every Monday 3:30 p.m. and Tuesday 11 a.m. Pacific Time. Only on Chardikla Time TV, North America.
आजो मटका कुल्फी आजो कोया कुल्फी आजो मलाई कुल्फी आजो ਵੱਡੇ ਦਿਲ ਦੇ ਬੰਦੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੱਡੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੰਮ ਖੁਸ਼ੀਆਂ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਖੁਸ਼ੀਆਂ ਵੰਡਦੇ ਨਾਲੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਕਿ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਹੋ ਜਵੇ ਸੈਮ ਸੌਂਗ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਫਨ ਆਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸ਼ੋ ਤੇ ਕਰ ਲੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਬੰਦੇ ਮਸਤੀ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਮਸਤੀ ਹਾਂ ਟਰੈਵਲ ਮਸਤੀ
देखो प्रोग्राम ट्रैवल मस्ती हर शनिवार दोपहर 12 बजे ते रिपीट टेलीकास्ट हर वीरवार दोपहर 12 बजे सिर्फ चढ़दीकला टाइम टीवी नॉर्थ अमेरिका ते।
हर एक इंसान के अंदर कोई ना कोई कलाकार लुकिया बैठा है। सत श्री अकाल, मैं हाँ फिल्म निर्देशक जतिंदर सिंह जीतू। लैके आ रहे हैं तुहाडे लई एक नवेकला प्रोग्राम जिसका नाम है लाइट कैमरा एंड चक दो फटे।